Many people, I'm sure, look at a bike saddle and think that not only must it be uncomfortable, it's probably also bad for you. You know, cause damage, pain, numbness, and for men, perhaps erectile dysfunction, prostate cancer maybe. And yet, many of us ride bikes a lot and don't suffer from any issues at all. Some cyclists, on the other hand, do. I have done. And so I can tell you that if something happens, it's really worrying. Look, this is my, oh my God, my penis has gone completely numb face. We'll come back to that because we're investigating the issues surrounding men's health and cycling. And to do that, we've teamed up with one of the foremost urologists here in the UK, a guy called Anthony Kaparis, to give solid and practical advice that all male cyclists should listen to. And if you need a reason other than his extensive clinical experience to believe what he says, he's also an Ironman, and those guys spend a lot of time in the saddle. Before we get started though, here is a quick anatomy lesson. This is me riding a bike, this is now a skeleton riding a bike, and this, ready, is a close-up of a penis. Stop sniggering at the back, it's not mine, alright? Nor is it necessarily to scale. Anyway, jokes aside, it is really important to be able to understand our own anatomy. You will be familiar, I'm sure, with the penis and testicles, usually tucked nicely out of the way when you're riding. The soft tissue area between your bum and your testicles is called your perineum. And when you are sat on the bike, this area is in contact with your saddle. Under the skin, you have your urethra, which is the tube that connects your bladder with the outside world via the penis. In the perineum, you also have major blood vessels and your pudendal nerve, which gives sensation to the area and therefore also helps with getting an erection. Above the perineum, you have your prostate, which is a gland that creates seminal fluid and which the urethra passes through. Because of our anatomy and the shape of saddles, it seems reasonable to make the link between cycling and pudendal pain or numbness, erectile dysfunction, and with prostate problems. But let us look into it a little bit more closely. Although don't worry, it is not going to get any more graphic than what you've already seen. You suggested, Anthony, that we break this subject down. So we've got numbness, erectile dysfunction, and also prostate-related issues, specifically prostate cancer. Let's start with numbness then. And first of all, can I tell you my numb penis story?
That'd be, yeah, I feel we know each other well enough for you to tell me about that.
It was when I was at a wind tunnel in Indianapolis, and we were doing a wind tunnel test, in which case you have to sit on a bike pedalling gently for 30 minutes whilst your bike does a full sweep of wind angles. What it means is you have to be completely motionless in your upper body because any kind of twitch will distort the results. So it's a really artificial situation in which to ride a bike. And after the 30 minutes, I got off and I realised quite quickly that I had absolutely no sensation at all in my penis. What's actually going on? Because fortunately, you know, sensation did return, so ultimately I don't think anything long-term has happened, but short-term, what's going on?
Basically, because of the pressure that you're exerting directly on the perineum, you're pressing on the nerves and you're pressing on some of the blood vessels, and that's what's causing the numbness. So after a period of time when you've been sitting on a nerve, it will undergo some very minor damage, not long-term damage, but basically end up causing numbness in the area that it supplies, and that's what happened to you.
So it's kind of the equivalent then of going to sleep in an odd position and waking up and your arm's completely dead, and it's massively disconcerting, but sensation returns quite quickly and there's no long-term damage.
Very similar to that, exactly right.
So what should we actually do about it then if we're suffering from numbness having been riding the bike? What's the first port of call?
If you find something happening like that, you get on the bike and it's numb afterwards, well then clearly you need to get it sorted out. And what that would involve is, you'll know more than I do, you get a proper bike fit and you get someone to have a look at your saddle and everything that goes with that. Now, if you get on your bike for prolonged periods and every single time it's numb in that area and it continues to be numb, and then you do the same again and again and again, then absolutely, inevitably, you will cause some long-term damage. But common sense takes over, and if it happens once, then just get a proper bike fit and get a proper saddle. A one-off period of numbness after that will not cause any long-term damage, either to the sensation in that area or to anything like erections and stuff like that.
So the next topic then would be erectile dysfunction. And given what we heard about numbness, is there a link then between cycling repeated numbness leading to erectile dysfunction?
The answer is no. The more important thing is the significance of erectile dysfunction in the first place. The processes that give you erection problems are exactly the same as the processes that give you cardiovascular disease, that give you a heart attack. So if you've got diabetes or high blood pressure or you smoke, then you are likely to have erectile dysfunction, but you're also likely to have heart disease. The fact is that most middle-aged blokes will take up cycling, it seems, at the moment. Now, if you're a cyclist and you're of that particular age and you develop erectile dysfunction, your first thought shouldn't be, oh, it's my saddle, it's just because of the cycling. It should be, I'm not going to put my head in the sand about it. This could be a marker for something that's undiagnosed. I need to get this checked.
You seem quite comfortable with the fact that it would be quite difficult to inflict the amount of damage on your pudendal nerve that would then lead to erectile dysfunction. So is it actually quite hard to do that?
The odd bit of numbness affecting your perineum is not going to give you erectile dysfunction, and actually it doesn't give you erectile dysfunction. Go and get it checked out. Firstly, to have a proper MOT from a heart point of view, then why not have some treatment for erection problems? I mean, it's gone full circle. It's gone from being this sort of slightly sniggery thing to a proper health issue which you can get sorted out.
And then finally then, what about prostate-related issues, and more specifically prostate cancer? Is there a link to cycling?
Thankfully, cycling has no effect on prostate cancer. But it's not only the development of prostate cancer, it's also the question of whether you get inappropriately investigated for prostate cancer. So one of the things that we use to give an indication of a risk of prostate cancer is by doing a blood test. And there is a thought that if you cycle lots, you might irritate your prostate, and that might artificially put your blood test up, which is called a PSA blood test, a prostate-specific antigen blood test, that puts it up. You have that blood test done, it's artificially raised, and then you have a whole load of investigations that you never needed, all because you were cycling. Okay. And actually, that's not true. There's the possibility that it might affect it a little bit, but if you look at laboratory-based research on lots and lots of molecular markers for prostate cancer, actually cycling and exercise don't make any difference to any of the indicators for prostate cancer. So cycling is good. It makes you fitter, it improves your cardiovascular health, all the things that reduce your risk of cancer. And it has no effect on an inappropriate set of investigation for prostate cancer. And then moving on from that, it doesn't, thankfully, give you a higher risk of prostate cancer. What we should be doing as blokes is having a think about it. So as we get older, we're more likely to get prostate cancer. So the first thing is to be aware of some of the symptoms. Now, the things that we look out for are things like waterworks symptoms, pain in your back, problems with bleeding in the water, those sorts of things. If you're worried about those things, if you're experiencing those things, then you should go to either a urologist or a GP and have a sensible discussion about being assessed. That doesn't automatically mean that you're going to get checked for prostate cancer, but that particular doctor will take you through the good things about getting checked and potentially the downsides of getting checked, and then you can both make a decision about whether to carry on or not. What we don't want is blokes just completely ignoring it in the first place. And in most cases, we find these things much more early these days, and it can be completely sorted.
And what kind of age are we talking about here? What kind of age of man should be starting to get concerned? And I appreciate there's probably tragic examples of early cases, but
you're right. So in my practice, I've got a very skewed picture. So we have such big practice that you'll have patients from in their 30s upwards to 80s and 90s. But certainly, as you get beyond 50, you should be having a think about it.
Okay.
And if you've got some worrying symptoms, don't panic. Don't put your head in the sand, and have a sensible discussion and assessment about what the problem is, whether there are any red flags to act on, and whether you need some more investigations, rather than not doing anything about it.
So there is no link between cycling and prostate cancer, but prostate cancer
is a big issue for a large proportion of cyclists, purely because they're men, they're middle-aged, and therefore they need to think about it.
Exactly.
Now, I don't know about you, but my biggest take-home, I think, from that conversation with Anthony is that we should probably not take our health for granted. We should confront our own mortality and actually seek help when we need it, because not doing things is probably the biggest problem that we're all going to face. Now, I probably shared a little bit too much information when I told you about my numb penis in the wind tunnel, but I think in the spirit of that, maybe we should all try and have a conversation with maybe our friends on the club run this weekend, have a conversation at least about this video. I think that would be a positive place to start. Now, also, please make sure you give this video a big thumbs up to thank Anthony for his time and sharing his incredible experience with us. And if you'd like to watch another video related to this subject, we've got one over on the channel right now which helps you actually buy the right saddle for you. So confronting that first issue of numbness head on.